we can be silent for just 3 seconds, because when I clip the video earlier, later it makes it easier to start fresh. So I'm going to be silent for 3 seconds, then we start.
Yeah, sure.
Great. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our LinkedIn Live on Conversational Hypnotic Storytelling. I'd like to start off by saying I'm going to introduce myself, then I'm going to give Stephen a chance to introduce himself, and I hope he speaks longer than I do. I'm an NLP trainer. I'm a leadership coach. I work one-to-one around the world. If I had one special thing, is I manage to attract really good clients. So I learn from everybody I work with. And I'm delighted to have Stephen here, and we worked together for a couple of years, but he is really good at what he does. So if I can throw this at you, Stephen, can you introduce yourself and let the audience know a little bit more about you?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, Michael. So I'm Stephen Anthony from Singapore, a medical doctor, psychiatrist, and I trained under Eric Greenleaf, who's the protege of Milton Erickson, probably the greatest psychiatrist in the world. And I learned a lot of principles of hypnotherapy from them. I hold multiple certifications in hypnotherapy and cognitive behavior therapy, in coaching, and NLP as well. But my passion is it's really around working with individuals that are truly interested in growing themselves and are really looking for tools that will help them grow to that next stage. And my job is to act as a conduit to give them all those tools to enable them step up and move to that next level. Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. I love that. I'm now going to run through the agenda, and then we'll start with the next bit. We sort of introduced ourselves. We're going to talk about what is conversational hypnotic storytelling, a phrase I really like, and it sort of puts me into a funny state, or an interesting state to start with. We're then going to look at how does the listener benefit from this sort of storytelling. We're going to look at some of the elements or essential components if you want to learn how to do it. Also, we're going to look at how would you benefit from learning to do this. And I'd like to split that into two things: how you learn from benefiting this particular subject, but how learning generally benefits you, putting your passion into something to learn and becoming good at, how that benefits as almost whatever the subject. Then how to become a master at this. If you want to get really good at this, what are some of the suggestions for how to do it? And we'll then look at some context and examples, and Stephen will give some real examples of hypnotic storytelling. Then Stephen's got a couple of products that we're not going to spend too much time on, but I think they're good, so I'm going to give him a little bit of time to explain it, and then we're going to summarize. So if I can throw the first question at you, what is conversational hypnotic storytelling?
Yeah, so I think we know about hypnosis, right? We have heard about hypnosis, and then, well, there are good hypnotists and there are very bad ones.
Sorry, that's the thing on its own.
Yes, and most of them don't know what they're doing, or at least whatever they're doing is pretty poor, and doesn't bring about many results. So if you take good hypnosis, the principles of good hypnosis, which is a powerful induction. Well, even before that, a good pre-talk followed by a powerful induction, and then the suggestions, and then the post-hypnotic talk. That is the regular hypnosis for you. Mm-hmm. So that explains hypnosis. Now, what hypnosis does is that it undercuts all the, this chatter that's going on in the brain, all these conscious barriers that we have that prevent us from taking in messages that help us. And what hypnosis does is it bypasses that critical faculty and it accesses the subconscious mind if done correctly. Now, conversational hypnosis is an element where you take the same principles of hypnosis, except that you're not going to do it in a very traditional way. So there's not going to be any induction. You're not going to get anybody into a lying state or a relaxed state, except that you are going to guide them into a conversation which looks like any regular conversation, and people may be already doing it. But understanding what conversational hypnosis is going to give you those tools that will help you understand where to start a conversation. If you have a clear intention in mind, yeah, let's think about, for example, you have a clear business intention,
Mm.
or you have a clear relationship intention, or you have a clear health intention. Getting people to take that specific action requires you to bypass the critical faculty, that critical chatter that's going to stop them from listening to you. Many people nowadays, in the world of information overload,
Mm.
they have this disease known as "I know it already, so what?" Right? Um, so, how do you then bypass these type of critical barriers and then give a message to the subconscious mind? There are a few movies made on this concept. For
All right.
example, the movie Inception,
Mm.
right? Where the whole task is to implant an idea and make it appear as if the idea was generated by the person themselves. Um, I think, to further quote Dale Carnegie, I think once said, the ideas that really stick are those ideas that people believe have come from within. Those are the ideas that people always hold on to very dearly. So, how do you then, through regular conversation, create such a window where there are ideas being sent through and the other person has inceptions that later on during the day they may evoke the state within themselves that gets them to take action? And that is the whole work of conversational hypnosis. Now, conversational hypnotic storytelling. Why storytelling? We've been a storytelling species from the earliest days. We learn through stories. We learn by understanding that, well, there were these people who came and did X and Y and Z. We call it history, but history is nothing but a story, a curated version of a story that we all like to believe, but it's still a story. And from day to day parlance, we always speak in stories. This is how we communicate as a civilization. When you take conversational hypnosis and you put storytelling together, that's when magic begins to happen, because everything then appears to be so natural. Now, the length of these stories can vary depending on the audience, depending on how much time you have. For example, if you're talking to your kid, if you're talking to your partner, you may not have more than 1 or 2 minutes. So, a quick anecdote, a quick quote, or a quick news story with small elements of powerful suggestions can do the trick. If you have enough time, for example, to give a talk to a wide audience, and you are, let's say, in a leadership position, and you need to inspire people to take that step, and furthermore you want them to believe that it's their own idea, it's in their own best interest to take action. So how do you construct that story, and how do you then embed those suggestions within the story? And this has been a big passion of mine, and this is where the whole concept of conversational hypnosis and conversational hypnotic storytelling comes.
No, brilliant, brilliant. Okay, you mentioned when you were talking that it could be used in business, it could be used in relationships. So, two questions: is let's accept business and relationships. First question is there anywhere else it can be used effectively? And the second question, for each area you come up with, can you give a specific example where it may have helped the listener in quite a significant way? So, first question is, we talked about relationships, we talked about business. Anything else where this could be used?
Okay, so let me give you a myriad of situations. So, what I will do is I will talk about the state you want to create at the person or the
Yeah,
purpose, and I'll give you an example of a story
brilliant,
and how it
brilliant,
all
brilliant,
works.
brilliant.
Um, so, First of all, before going into that, I'd like to again further emphasize that there are different elements to hypnotic storytelling, and we will cover those elements a
Yeah,
little bit later
yeah,
down. Yeah.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
for now, let's just look at the purpose and what type of stories to tell. So let's say somebody is in a very distraught state, they are stressed. Yeah. You want them to relax. In that kind of a stage, you can tell them a story about a peaceful forest, um, and how you were walking in that forest. It could be a story that someone else told you, or something you read in a magazine, or something you watched on TV. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you tell the story about walking in a peaceful forest and how all the elements made you feel calm. Yeah. Another example of a story can be a gentle drifting river. How taking a cruise on this gentle river in a small canoe boat was so relaxing, and how you enjoyed this with the sunset. Yeah, that is a story for example, relaxation. Now, another example can be, let's say you want somebody to heal emotionally. Yeah.
Mm.
Uh, and there might be very difficult topics where people have self doubt or they have grief that they want to resolve. So, telling a story about overcoming challenges might help them release those feelings. Let's say the purpose is you want to enhance focus and mental clarity. So, you could talk about the story of someone who finds their path through a maze, and that can create this feeling of a sharp focus, and you can add elements that inspire mental clarity. Let's say you want behavioral change. This is something that many people want.
Yeah,
So you could tell a narrative about a character quitting a bad habit, um, and that story itself of how they did it can bring about this behavioral change. Let's say somebody needs more confidence, which is something that everybody can benefit from. We could tell the story of a shy person discovering how their voice was so powerful and how it empowered people that were listening to it. Let's say somebody needs to get into a creative mindset to solve a certain problem or problem solve. You could tell the story of somebody who was climbing a mountain and how they found an approach to overcoming common obstacles. Another common example is for relationships. How do you talk about deep love? How do you talk about understanding? How do you talk about feeling a sense of a deep connection, a connection so strong that it transcends time and space, where when they are speaking with you, they feel that they found this partner that touches their soul? How do you create those stories? Classic examples I teach many of my students are the stories of Orpheus and Eurydice. It's a mythological tale, but there is a certain way to tell it which evokes a very strong feeling of emotion in both the person who says it, but also in the person who listens to that story. Let's say you want to get people motivated and inspired, which is again a very
yeah,
common
yes,
theme.
yeah,
You could talk about resilience, triumph, how somebody tapped into their inner strength, for example, and they pursued their dreams. Let me give you one last one, and we can go back to the
yeah,
topic. Let's
yeah,
say a very good use is when you want people to cultivate good habits. We could talk about, and let's say that you want to plant that idea and you want it to grow inside the mind. You could talk about planting seeds
mm,
and how this nurtures over a timeline. Now, at the back of this, one of the things Milton Erickson used to say,
yeah, yeah,
that the unconscious mind is a reservoir of resources. um, the stories, when said with all these suggestions that we want to make, taps into that reservoir in the mind, and we need to be able to trust that it will happen, and we need to just we need to make the ground fertile. We just
yeah.
need to put the seeds in and water it, and it will start happening by itself.
Yeah, brilliant. Brilliant. Okay. Excuse me. Um, I always like breaking when I'm working when I'm teaching people. I always like to break things down into the elements. So, what do you think some of the key elements for somebody learning this stuff might be? If you
Sure.
what are some of the key building blocks that if people master, they're able to start putting it together themselves?
Yeah. So anything that, well, we have to understand that we have two mediums of communication. Um, some say it's three, but let's just narrow it down to two: words and body language, right?
All right, right.
So words in itself can be again split into trans
Yeah,
words, presuppositions, suggestions, and commands. I'll cover what each of these are very briefly.
yeah, yeah.
What we want to do is we want the mind to go from outward facing to inward facing, which is we want to divert the listener's attention within through the use of words and through the use of body language. Now, what are these words that we will then use? There's about 17 trans words that are very powerful. For example, imagine, suppose, remember. These are all trans words. Trans words are words which again divert the focus within and create a certain imagination in the
Mm.
mind. And some words accomplish that more easily than others. Yeah. Then there is presuppositions. Presuppositions are ideas, let's say, that are taken for granted, or ideas that just kind of slip through, slide through without any kind of resistance. Let me give you an example.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's look at the statement: when you start feeling confident, you'll notice how easy things become. Yeah, so the statement is: when you start feeling confident, you'll notice how easy things become. So the presupposition here is when you start feeling confident, which is we assume that you can feel confident. That is the presupposition. And when we are talking about inducing states of confidence, we start with that assumption. So it's a presupposition.
Mm.
Another example will be as you begin to relax, you might notice your breathing becoming more and more deep. So as you begin to relax, the presupposition here is that you will begin to relax. Yeah, so that's a presupposition. Then of course you have suggestions. So suggestions can be verbal, in that you can say you might find yourself feeling more and more confident. So phrases such as you might find yourself, it's easy to, it's natural to, when you start observing, when you begin to, all these are kind of phrase openers, and you can follow it up with a clear suggestion. So another example can be you may notice how easy it is to let go of stress. So that is a suggestion for you. Now, a command is a little bit more different.
Mm.
So with a command, you are giving more direct ideas. For example, uh, if you want to say, as you close this chapter is a bit more direct. Yeah? As you close this chapter in your life, you might begin to think of new avenues and new opportunities that open up. Um, so those are the different elements. So you have transwords, you have presuppositions, you have suggestions, and then you have commands.
Brilliant.
Then there is the other element, which is body language. Um, One of the easiest ways to do this is by um, mirroring. There is a lot of mirroring that helps, observing gestures of people. Um, People often use gestures for important states of mind. For example, if you some people say, "Oh, that was a very good um, musical." Yeah, so when they gesture that way, they are lifting their kind of eyebrows and they say that. That is their kind of almost like what do you call, a hook
Yeah.
to recall that state again. So if you want to suggest that something is really good, you may want to say, "Oh, do you want to go to that particular place? It had very good reviews. and they will immediately get the idea. Yeah. Um, there is both negative ones and positive ones. But again, just think about this phrase: a gesture is equal to 1,000 words.
Mm.
If you pick up a core gesture that either denotes pleasure or pain, it can be used in several ways. Yeah. So that's a little bit of the elements of
Now,
conversation.
that's very good. Something I'm interested in your views and your emphasis, because you were saying picking up gestures. So am I assuming from this that in your view it's very important that the hypnotist listens and watches their subject?
Uh, yeah. So I think it depends on how high the stakes are.
Okay. Tell me more. You got my interest.
So if you really have to fine tune it, okay, for like example, let's take the movie Inception, right?
Right.
There, the stakes are very high. He's getting the person to kind of break up their father's company, and they want to think that it's their own idea. So the stakes are tremendously high. Or you may be out on a date,
Right.
and you get probably one or two chances, and that's it, right? So stakes are very high. In those kind of a situation, you need the entire arsenal. So you
Right.
need to have a clear strategy of what you're going to say, what stories you're going to tell, and then you're going to be watching for gestures as well.
Yeah.
Um, but otherwise, I would say you can be more relaxed and just understanding that body language has been around much longer than verbal communication.
Right.
This should help us, right? Because let's say humans have been around for about 100,000, 200,000 years now. And what we know is that people have been using gestures. Language is a recent development.
Okay.
The oldest scripts are like 10,000 years old. But prior to that, about 90% of the time, we used body language. So we know this instinctively. So body language that way can be powerful, but many people are not very emotive. They are not, especially with their body.
Right.
So sometimes it may be a bit hard to read. But if somebody has one foot outside the door, it's quite easy to tell, right? you know, you don't want to sell them on anything, right? So things like that. Obviously, if somebody is turned away from you, it's a clear indication that they're not interested. So if somebody is kind of looking at their watch, it's a easy tell. So there are some basic ones that are very easy to
Yeah.
catch. Then
Yeah.
there are some more nuanced ones which you will get with practice.
Yeah. Okay. Um, let's move on from that. You've spent quite a lot of time mastering this.
Mhm.
Um, how have you personally benefited from learning this stuff? There's two different questions, and I'm going to make sure. I'd like to cover both of them. Firstly, have you benefited from learning this stuff? And secondly, very much a more generalized question, because I think we all in life, the people that learn things, it helps them in many ways. It helps them in many ways, because you need a certain discipline to learn things, and that actually helps you develop your skill set all along. So, firstly, the specific question: how have you benefited yourself from learning this stuff and really spending quite a bit of time and effort in it?
Yeah. So I think I had a very privileged position of studying with Eric Greenleaf, like I
Yeah,
mentioned,
yeah,
absorbing that, years of experience and scientific rigor that's there. Then I had the interesting opportunity to create my own program on conversational
yeah,
hypnosis. So when you teach something, you become very good at it.
yes,
So how have I benefited from this?
yeah,
I've reaped a lot of benefits from it. I've been fortunate enough. One of the first things that I noticed was conversations tend to be more easier. Yeah, there is
mm,
less friction. There is less of arguments. There is less of trying too hard to get something. Things appear natural. People tend to like you more. And what I've seen with other people is that it helps you create these deep connections with people.
right,
Because when you understand this process, you also become more empathetic. you also become more relatable and impactful in the process. So it helps create very deep connections with people. It also improves your communication skills
Yeah.
by learning all these phrases. We teach in the
Yeah.
program, and all these phrases that we follow, you naturally become a good conversationalist. You don't have to think too much about talking, it just comes naturally. So improved communication skills, I would say. Believe it or not, when I started out, I was actually a shy person.
Really?
um, yes. before I When I was in medical school,
Yeah. Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
a very shy person. I would be a quiet guy who didn't talk much, not because I was not smart, but it's just because I didn't know what to say, and I couldn't kind of wag my tongue like the others did. um, but through this process,
Yeah.
I think what has become very interesting is that uh, communication has become very natural and normal. Yeah. The other benefit I've seen is that you can coach others and mentor others better.
Yeah.
If you master storytelling, you can get powerful changes to happen within people. Yeah. You can help others achieve those significant breakthroughs. You are also more intentional with your communication. When you have an opportunity, you already know how to seize it. You already know how to go into that situation, get what you want, and take the next steps in a win win way, of course. You also know how to use it for positive influence. Because I've been in situations where, well, there is always a tussle of good versus evil in the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you have the arsenal to shape conversations and win conversations, you can go and you can create that positive influence, because you can sway the audience. Yeah. And people will clap for you because of that.
Yeah. Okay.
It also helps build trust, and that's something I've seen as well. Yeah.
Okay. Just say a little bit more. How does learning this stuff help you with relationships? Very top level. Very look for a very top level answer, because I think that's a really interesting subject.
Yeah. There's about 17 emotions that we
Right.
that we can experience as a human being in a relationship.
Right.
Uh, Again, in the course, I cover each of these emotions and how to have conversations around each of these emotions. Yeah. So let me give you a few examples. For example, trust, intimacy, being open. Then there is feelings of love.
Yeah.
Love is different for different people. They represent it very differently based on how they grew up. So there is no universal definition for love. So we have to elicit it from the other person. And doing so in the process, we have to understand how to make them feel all those emotions in your presence. And when they feel all those emotions in your presence, that whole bundle,
Yeah.
they call it love. Yeah. Then there is, of course, lust, which is very useful, a very useful emotion. Then there is feelings of chemistry. You want to understand what is a good chemistry. And then there is all these specific emotions that you want to very systematically create. Somebody very well said, they said, love is a verb. Yeah? Love
Right.
is a verb. That's because it's not that once somebody has fallen in love and once a relationship has started, that's the end of the process. For many people it is. They don't know what to do
Yeah.
after that.
Yeah.
It's just about going out, going on vacations, watching movies, meeting people. It's just about that. But if you know what are the core emotions that you want to create in your partner, and you have the tools to create it over and over and over and over again, you become irreplaceable in their life. Nobody will have that kind of an influence in their life. Yeah. So that is where I think it tends to be very powerful in relationships. And I've seen this change happen in couples very, very quickly. In fact, within 4 to 5 sessions of working with people, they notice a lot of good differences. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. Okay, okay. What? Sorry, I got. I went into a state. I went into a mild trance, um, um, listening to you. Um, I absolutely agree, because I found it with my clients. Learning even a little bit of hypnosis has tuned up their overall communication skills, whether it's learning how to do commands, embedded commands, all the lot has made them much more fluent and communicate much more easily, sometimes about very difficult subjects. So I absolutely agree with that. I'd like a very top level answer to this question. And please disagree if you don't agree with the thrust of it. When I'm working with clients, because I work with them for 6 months or a year normally, I always like them to take on something for them to learn, because I think actually having that curiosity and interest in becoming better at something is very good for us, me included. Do you have a view which may be related to the subject or not, where people focusing on improving their skills in something actually helps them? Even the principle of doing it, the
Yeah,
principle of learning actually helps their lives.
absolutely. I think whenever we learn, we form new
Oh,
neuronal connections, right? So the very process of learning makes people feel good. Many children don't experience thoughts of sadness, not very often, yeah,
right,
unless there is a
right,
real stressful situation in their life. But other than that, most children going through a normal childhood, they don't experience very bad emotions or sadness or loneliness to that extent. One
right,
of it is of course they're naturally put in that state where they meet other kids and they get along. Yes, there is that. But there is also that thing that they're constantly learning as a child. They're constantly memorizing things, and it creates new neuronal pathways in the mind. So this is very important to keep your brain functional, active, to keep on learning. Like one of the people I'm always inspired by is you, Mike. You are constantly
oh, I'm
learning.
getting old and I'm still learning.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see you do that, every week. You're learning something new. So that itself keeps your mind young, and it also makes you feel good. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, let's move on from that. If somebody is like you were, is in fact, I can ask you almost how you did it or what happened to make you do it, and then we'll generalize it to what advice would give other people. You've spent a lot of time and you've mastered this. What are the key things that have enabled you to master it? And question one. Question two is, if anybody said to you, look, I want to get really good at this, how do you suggest I approach it? What would you say? So let's take your first. Let's take you. What do you think happened, or yeah, what do you think happened? What was the driver? What did you do? What were your beliefs that got you to throw yourself in and actually become a master of this stuff?
So the first thing was that it was fun. Yeah, it was
Right.
a good skill to learn.
Yeah,
It's always interesting to understand how much more influence you can have in the world.
yeah,
And when you see that the results are good, you want to understand how far can you go. How much better can you get at this. So those were some of the driving forces for me. I wanted to implement it in certain areas of my life, and it worked quite well. um, Start by understanding the foundations. So
right. Yeah,
understanding the principles of what is trance, what is the subconscious mind. Today we discussed about what are suggestions, what are embedded commands. That's a good
right, right.
first.
My apologies. I can't resist asking you, what is the unconscious mind?
Yeah, the unconscious mind is something that we cannot access during the daytime, but it
Right, right,
controls us. It controls us and it pulls our strings. Why do we do what we do without us even being aware of? For example, when you're driving a car, you may be thinking about something.
yeah,
30 minutes later, yes, you are arriving at a destination. But if you know the journey, you are not thinking consciously about every left and every right you are taking. It's your subconscious mind that's taken over and it's operating in the background. It's the same thing, for example, when you're brushing your teeth, it's a subconscious thing that's operating you. These are all visible in the daily world. But think about your thinking itself, how many invisible things that are there, that are always ongoing. So think of it as the core engine that is then pulling the strings of all your thoughts. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
building on that, sorry, but building on that, this may be a meaningless question, but I'm interested in how you address it. Which is in charge, the conscious mind or the unconscious mind, or do they share it? How does this work? And another thought I'm going to throw into this. One of the things I think that learning hypnosis is good is we actually learn how to communicate between our conscious and unconscious minds a lot more than we've done before we know it. So that's a benefit I think comes out. But let me throw the question: what's the balance between the conscious and the unconscious mind? Who controls the ship?
Yeah. If you develop so much power, I think one of the philosophers said your reason and logic should be so powerful that it overtakes your emotion. Yeah.
Right.
If you were to develop so much power over your conscious mind that your conscious mind operates the entire show, then it will require so much energy that you will go unconscious.
Sorry, I'm processing what you're saying. This is good trance induction. Sorry, carry on, carry on.
It's because conscious thought requires energy.
Yeah,
Um, that is why the unconscious mind takes over. That's why it's there. It exists for a reason. You just need to give it the coordinates, and it's just running the show in the background. Then there is the whole, kind of fog of these thoughts that we have. This is just a blanket of, thoughts that you have. It's just a fog. Think of it as a fog.
yeah,
Whatever you think
yeah.
you're thinking every day, all the thousands of thoughts, is just a fog. But behind it lies the unconscious mind. So, is it possible to take complete control of the conscious mind? Again, the answer becomes if you take complete control of the conscious mind, you don't have enough energy to run it at a mental level. You cannot sustain it, so you will become unconscious. So you cannot completely take over the conscious unconscious mind. But what you can do is you can send messages to the unconscious mind, and that can be powerful once you give it clear intention, clear focus. And if you're able to bypass that veil of thoughts and get it into the deep unconscious mind to trigger that change and make it happen, then you will see a change in your life. uh, Getting through that blanket of thoughts is the challenge.
Actually, I get that. I really like that. We're talking about how you got good at this. Is there anything you want to say to summarize or give a top level view, and then move on to what advice, suggestions would you make to anybody else that was treating this really seriously? Now, there are some reasons for doing a short course and things like that, but if somebody said, I'm determined to get really good at this, what sort of things would you suggest to them?
Sure. So let me just kind of give you the whole blueprint.
Yeah,
Here
yeah,
are
brilliant,
steps, and
brilliant, brilliant,
here's
brilliant.
how you can do it. Yeah. So we started by talking about understanding the foundations. Yeah. So
Yeah,
understand the foundations. Number two, study storytelling techniques. Always learn how to craft compelling narratives, how to, practice your timing and pacing, how to use your voice with the correct number of pauses to get
yeah,
attention. The next step is to keep on nurturing your emotional intelligence. Cultivate empathy, understanding the other person's emotions and putting yourself in their shoes, and constantly doing that. The next step would be to learn from experts, attend workshops, take courses, get a coach. These are all very useful skills because one idea can save you, tens of hours of studying by yourself. There's courses on this. I talked about my own course that
yeah,
exists on this. Then practice, practice, practice. Yeah, you have to start small, start using small suggestions, see how it works, see how it works, then get some feedback, and see what worked, what didn't work. If I said it in a different way, does it land better? With time, and with some coaching and supervision,
Yeah.
or you can do it yourself, you will get better at it. But you need to think of it as a useful skill that you can master throughout your life. You can keep on getting good at it and good at it and good at it, and it will serve you in every walk of life. Even if you are a great great grandpa, it is still useful to tell powerful stories.
Okay.
Um,
And actually, that leads me to a question we haven't talked about. How important is ethics in this? Because as I've worked with people, I found that some of my clients have got really good, but they haven't even noticed they've got really good, and they actually start being able to influence people much more. And therefore, my view is the better we get, the more responsibility we have as to how we influence people, or the direction we take people when we influence them. So, what's your thoughts on the ethical side of this?
yeah, two things are very important, right? One is sustainability to
Right.
whatever you do. People are smart. If you convince somebody, and there's a lot of people trying to make a quick sale, trying to do this and
Yeah.
trying to do,
Yeah.
those things eventually will undermine your credibility. So what you want to do is think of what is sustainable. You want to create a path that is in the direction of the other person's values.
Yeah.
There is a whole school of thought where people say that you cannot hypnotize anybody unless you're in line with their own values, their own core values. There has to be something that is resonating with their values, and you need to align with them to take them down that hypnotic path. So any change that sticks because you are striking some of the core values, you're striking
Right.
something that the person wants. So I don't see much of a risk for it if you're thinking of this as a long term venture. If you want to be with somebody long term, if you want to have a recurring business over and over again, if you want people referring other people to you, these are all long term objectives.
Yeah.
So for that to happen, one is think of what is win win and what is in line with their values. Yeah. So that will automatically kind of set you in line with the ethics that's required.
I like that. I like that answer. Okay, let's move on. You've actually given us lots of examples as we've been going through this, but is there a particular story as an example? You got the floor. You have the floor to tell a conversational hypnotic story.
Sure. So let me give you a few small mini stories. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
And that should give you kind of a taster for what a long story should be. So let's say you want to embed the suggestion. You may start to view me as someone you can open up to. Yeah. That is a suggestion that is useful
Mm,
in many situations. Let's say a parent talking to a child, uh, a parent talking to a teenager, you being on a date, you being in a relationship, you working with a colleague or an employee. The suggestion is you may start to view me as someone you can open up to. So you can start by either referencing a story you read. There are 7 different ways to do this. Yeah. So you can either talk about a story you read. You can either talk about something you heard on the radio or something you heard on a podcast, something you came across in a movie, something you read in a magazine, something a friend told you, something your aunt told you. So you can start your story with that, kind of a reason. And you could say something like, yesterday I met my long time friend. When you meet someone and you just get this vibe that you can really open up to them and you can talk to them, you feel like you can tell the person anything you say would be heard and understood without being judged. It's a cool feeling, isn't it? And I felt like that yesterday when I met my friend. So that's
mm,
a small example, but we are layering in multiple suggestions there, which is, you can really open up, You can really talk to me. You could say anything to me. These are all suggestions. Yeah. Now, that is just a snippet. But when you cultivate that conversation, when you cultivate that topic, it creates that atmosphere, that vibe in which people are more willing to share. Um, Let me give you another example. Let's say you want to give the suggestion, sense an interesting chemistry. Yeah. Here's the story. When Job, yesterday I was reading this interesting story in this magazine. When Jobs and Wozniak first met,
Yeah.
there was this immediate and palpable chemistry between them. Jobs' visionary ideas combined with Wozniak's suggestions and expertise led to creation of Apple. People say that you could sense a very interesting chemistry between the two. They knew that they could complement each other, and this created one of the most successful companies in history. So the suggestion there was sense an interesting chemistry between us. So I don't know if you observed that, Michael, but that was embedded
Yeah.
within the conversation.
Right.
Yeah. So the conversation itself looks very innocuous, but that is, again, you're creating that vibe.
I think that's very good, and I'm glad you emphasised that, because that's exactly what you can do when you learn this stuff. You can take what was a normal story and you can embed some really good, cool stuff in it. So I like that. I love that as an example.
It also helps you understand what stories and suggestions you should not embed. Because many times people unknowingly tell the wrong story and give the wrong suggestion, and the other person ends up feeling uncomfortable, and nobody can tell what happened, and they just say, well, there was no
No,
chemistry.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think you're absolutely right. And actually, I'm going to loop back to something else you said that I think is really important. Some of my clients, before they get involved in hypnosis, are a little bit worried they're going to be influenced against their will. And I'm building on something you said earlier, but I'm putting it in a different context. If you don't want to be influenced, make sure you're clear of your own purpose and your own values. Because if you do that and somebody tries to use this stuff against you, it will bounce off.
Mm-hmm.
So I do want to emphasize there is for everybody here. I think there's a really important point that we owe it to ourselves to be clear about what we want and to work out and say, what's our values, what's our direction, what's our purpose, because that gives us inherent protection against people using these in the wrong way. And sometimes people will use this in the wrong way by mistake.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So just a thought that I found out. Let me move on, Steve, because I think
let me give you something fun. Let's do something fun as well. Many times when I'm working with a student, I would tell them, what is the state you want to create in the person? Whether they are going to meet somebody or something, and we ask for an emotion usually.
Yeah.
And I help them create that conversation beforehand, before going to that scenario. So I know we didn't rehearse this. I know it's off the script, but Michael, think of an emotion and just name an emotion. Let's try and create it on the fly.
Playfulness.
What is that?
Playfulness.
Playfulness. Okay. Playfulness.
Choose a different word. Choose anything that's related.
Yeah. Absolutely. You could say something like this. I was reading this magazine yesterday, and I was looking at this very sour article that I read. It's very strange. Some people have a very angry tone to when they write things, and it got me wondering. What is really the good way to connect with people? And one of the thoughts I came up with was playfulness. When you are really playful, when you are in that mood and when you are in that zone, you don't know what really triggers that, but something goes on inside of you and you just click. It just clicks, and you step into that state of playfulness, and suddenly everything becomes so joyous. It just becomes wonderful to interact with the other person. Everything's just comes so naturally. What do you think creates that kind of playfulness? Yeah. So
yeah, no, I like it.
Do you want to do another one?
Um, so is this a state? Just so let me go back to the rules of our game. Do you want me to create a state that I want to get in, not a state I don't want to get? Not a state.
Create a state you want to get in. Yeah.
Determination.
Determination. Yeah. So you could think of any number of stories about determination. So let's say you wanted to actually talk about determination to a group of people that you are leading, right?
Yeah.
That is, then you could think of X number of stories about determination. So you could talk about, for example, one of the things that I really admire about people is determination. You know, that sense when a person can go into a job or you give them a task and they are so determined that they just want to see it done. And determination can come in different ways, in different states. It can be just that light determination where you say, I'll do it. Or it can be that medium level determination where you say, I'm a professional and I want to do it. But then there is once in a while, you have one of those projects where you just want to hit the home run. You decide you will do what it takes to hit that home run. And it is that kind of a determination that really makes a difference. And then you could go and talk about a project, or you can layer it in multiple.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, let's move on. I'd like you to spend a couple of minutes because you were talking about some course that you've got. I'd like you to spend a couple of minutes talking about it. Curious enough, though, I am going to suggest to everybody that just by listening to Stephen speak, you will pick a lot more of this up than you think. Just by relaxing, being relaxed yourself, and listening to good hypnotists speaking, you will learn the stuff. It's a very interesting phenomenon, but I found it out. So thank you for thank you for giving us an example of your skills. Tell us a little bit about 2-3 minutes. You can plug your course, 2 or 3 minutes.
Absolutely. And you're very kind, Michael. So, we spent about a year and a half, worked with the team to create this program on conversational hypnosis. You can find it at our website, psychologymd.com. And it's a course that takes you step by step with many examples. There's about 400 different phrases and examples. And the idea is that by listening to it over and over again, it just becomes the way in which you talk. You just naturally speak that way, in a very convincing, authoritative, powerful, persuasive way. And once you set an intention, you will be able to get anything you want in a conversation. You will be able to lead minds, open people's thinking, change hearts, influence people, and you can bring about changes in people that you will be astonished just looking at the results. And how it happens is by going through this course, which is a 5-week course. There's about 40 videos every day. You set aside about half an hour and you just listen to the video. And there is, of course, repetition audio drills that teach you phrase for phrase on how to use these presuppositions. Gives you multiple number of examples as well. So it's a work that will take you probably some time, but think of it as a skill you're mastering. Just as you would learn guitar or learn a new language, you are learning a new language of conversational hypnosis. So that's available at our website, psychologymd.com, and you can go check it out. And of course, there is always coaching that you can avail at the website as well.
Okay, and we'll make sure we put some useful links in so everybody can access you. Okay, let me bring this to a close. Thank you very much for what you said. What are some very top level last words you'd like to say? If there are a couple of phrases of what you'd like people to remember from today, what might they be?
Think about the vision for yourself. The vision for yourself 3 years from now, 5 years from now. And I would like to challenge you on that vision. Can you think higher? Can you think better? Can you think farther? Can you create a sustainable version of you that not only wins the future, but outstrips, outthings, and you blow past every kind of milestone, every kind of goal that you set for yourself. What is that version of you? And I highly encourage you to think about it. Yeah, that's the only message I have.
Absolutely great. And as I say, thank you everybody for watching, listening, and for those watching it directly, for those watching the replay. Thank you. Have a great life.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, thanks a lot. I'm going to close the stream down and wish everybody well.